Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
How are
How
you?
are we?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm great.
Awesome.
I'm actually calling from my granddaughter's room. I'm super excited. We literally just got here. My son, daughter-in-law, and two grandkids are in Chattanooga. So
Okay.
my
Very
wife and I
cool.
drove all night to be here so I could take my calls, and this was the room that was free. So it's pretty
Now,
cool.
we have to ask, is she young enough to be not embarrassed that you're in her room? Or is she just really, really cool about it?
She's three,
Okay,
so
so you're still very
she's
cool.
really cool. She's the oldest of four grandchildren.
Oh,
So
wow.
both my
Congratulations.
sons have two
Okay.
each. So she's the only girl. So she's definitely the princess.
Oh, that is funny.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me here, guys. I'm excited to be here and meet with your
No,
students.
we are thrilled that you are here. Just so you're aware, we are recording this. Is that okay?
No problem.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Um,
Appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. I know we've got a couple of people jumping in as well. Um, we can start basically whenever you are ready.
Great. The just let me review because I really want to make sure that what I deliver is what you guys are looking for.
Okay.
The list that you gave me on LinkedIn was really talking about, how I got started, a little bit of my background, those kinds of things. Was there, and please feel free to lead me with questions and, if you want anything specific.
No, we would just love to hear, I know you have such an amazing background and experience. And I know I have had the pleasure as of I think Jason, I think you were there last year, listening to you speak at Disney Springs. So you're an amazing speaker, and I want you to share some of your experience, guiding words, and we can just see where this takes us.
Sure. That's, I love it. Fantastic. I'm assuming we can do some Q&A. So
Absolutely, yes.
perfect.
Would you prefer that we wait till the end, or do you want people just to jump in and raise their hand if they have something along the way?
Well, if you'd like, I can talk a little bit about my experience, how I got in to the industry,
Okay.
a little bit about what I've done. And then I was thinking there's a couple of things that always stand out when I talk to university students. So I was just going to bring it up regarding teamwork and team composition and those
Okay.
kinds of things, just to kind of talk about. Then, I'm thinking not more than about a half hour so that
Okay.
we can have the rest of the time for everybody else.
Sounds perfect. So that what we will do that then. I'll just say for everybody, let's hold our questions till the end. If it's something that you don't want to forget, type it in the chat and then we'll address it at towards the end.
Perfect.
And with that, I'm throwing it over to you.
Sounds great. Good to see you, Jason.
And you can share your screen. You can do, start whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Well, how many people do we have joining us today?
We've got about a half a dozen right now. We're hoping
Okay.
I know it's not as much as we had hoped. We are definitely, we put the call out, but we're just now at 3:30. So I'm hoping we'll get some more. Plus, we definitely will be using this, as a recruiting tool as well. Because like I said, you're an incredibly gifted speaker.
Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. So glad that I could join you today. Uh, for those of you that don't know me or maybe have never seen me speak before, my name is Theron Skees. Probably spent, I think I just calculated it for another thing that I'm doing, 36 years
Wow.
in the industry. I started in film and television, which is kind of an interesting place to start. And it was amazing because I had a construction background. My family, was in the building trade. So I kind of came in through that doorway of sort of handicraft, craft work, process, systems mindset of building. Start with a pile of raw materials. You put a focus and an expertise, and you build something. So I took that into film and TV and did lots of scenic painting, sculpting, lots of set work, And I really became a bit disillusioned with that work simply because it was so temporary. It would be sort of disassembled, some stuff recycled and thrown away, some stuff saved and go back to the warehouse. And most people didn't get to stand on set and see how cool it was. So it was a great transition to move to theme experience design, because that is theme parks and hotels and casinos and cruise ships and retail dining and entertainment venues. And so that was much more permanent, same level of detail from film, but you could execute them in a way that millions of people saw it. And frankly, it had to be bulletproof with millions and millions of guests coming through and touching it every year. So I came into Imagineering that route. I was what you would call a field art director. And we can talk about that role a little bit later, but basically a creative leader that's very craft focus, handiwork, craft person, working with your hands. And so I did what they call artificial rock work. So anytime you're at a Disney park or a Universal park and you see, mountains and giant rock work, chances are it is artificial. It's been made and sculpted by somebody. Well, that was my job for quite a few years. I was recruited and went to Disneyland Paris when it was being built in 1991, a long time ago. And I did all of the rock work inside and outside of Pirates of the Caribbean, which was so cool. Nerded out the whole time because it's one of my favorite attractions. I also worked at Universal Studios and did rock work for them. And that kind of moved me along in my career as I was dancing between that and film. And my last film that I worked on was a film called Stargate. It's probably something that your parents saw. And if there's any film buffs here, then you maybe have seen it, especially if you're a sci-fi fan. But I did a lot of sculpting for that film. And after that film, I went to work at Walt Disney Imagineering full time. That was in 97,
And a good movie,
1997.
by the way.
Yeah, it was a good movie. And you can tell it was a good movie because how many different TV series did it birth? Like three,
Several.
four?
Yes,
Yeah,
several. And
whole TV series.
yeah, it was a great universe.
That was awesome. So, anyways, that was really fun. But at Imagineering, I started again as a field art director, working in it's called character concrete or character plaster. It basically is when you do very highly ornate building facades. So my job when I got hired was working on, at the time it was Disney MGM Studios. The whole backlot had to be redesigned, all the facades and worked on. And so that was my first job back in Florida. And then I got hired as the art director for that park. And my career as a creative leader out of the field, moved to the office, and just kind of built that way. And I was 23 years with Walt Disney Imagineering. What was really amazing is that I got so many opportunities to do so many different things in creative direction. Lots and lots and lots of design work, attractions and hotels and lands and small little designs, big designs, and got to do a lot of international work as well, which I always highly recommend to future generations who are really moving into this field, is that you can get a lot of experience when you work overseas. It is challenging for a whole bunch of reasons, but it is really good experience. So I was able to gain that. But I also had the opportunity to work, as they say, out of the berm. If you think about a theme park, it's surrounded by a mound of earth, basically, and the trees are elevated on that mound of earth, and that's called a berm, BERM. And the whole idea is to control line of sight so you don't see outside of that fantasy world that you're immersed in. Well, when you work out of the berm, you're kind of no longer doing theme park proper work. And for Disney, that was two very large projects for me. One was Disney Springs, which I have the distinct pleasure of. Michael, how many years is it now that we've run those tours for you guys?
Oh goodness, this year will be 5. Does that
That
sound right?
sounds right. Yeah. So 5 years, all the way back when it was IUPUI, you guys, professors would bring groups of students to IAAPA, and then I had the pleasure of meeting with you and walking you through Disney Springs so that you could kind of get a firsthand look at all the different principles and complexities and stuff at play. So that was one out of the berm project for me. And then the other, which was my final project with Walt Disney Imagineering, was Disney Cruise Line. I had the opportunity to be the creative vice president over that entire portfolio. So it was going from theme parks and attractions and hotels to nautical design, which I had no idea. I'd never done that before. And like all my projects, it was a complete first for me to get started. But what a blast leading the team to design the Triton class ships and to discover Eleuthera Island and Lighthouse Point, because we looked at a lot of islands and a lot of different locations in the Bahamas, which was pretty cool. You get flown in on a little float plane with kayaks on the buoys, and then you'd land, get out of the plane in the kayak, and kayak around islands in the open ocean. That was kind of fun. So we found Lighthouse Point. The company bought it, and then we master plan designed that space. And Joe Rohde worked with us on that. That was really fun. So that's kind of
Quick
my,
question, Theron.
yeah, yeah.
What ships did you work on specifically?
It's Triton class. So it's the Wish. Now you're going to test me on names because they weren't the Wish, the Treasure,
The Treasure,
the
yes.
what's the third one?
Destiny.
The Destiny.
Yeah, okay.
Now, is the Treasure the big one that's going to Asia?
No, that is the Adventure.
There you go. Yeah, so it was the those three, the Treasure, the Destiny, and they used Destiny. That was a good one.
Yeah.
We had, as you can imagine, we had a list of many, many names. But one thing you should know is when you design ships, you design that's why they call it a class, one class of ship, and then the others that are made within that class, because you don't just order one ship, you usually order a group of either 3 or 4. And then all 4 of those are based on that design. And then in the very beginning, you work with the shipyard to decide which spaces within the ship can change. Because especially at Disney, we wanted each ship to be a completely different theme. So we identified areas that would change and what could you change. And then, of course, the team master planned out all that stuff. So all I was going to say is that's kind of my Disney career. In 2020, the pandemic hit, of course, and like millions of people around the world, I was furloughed, all the work stopped, and I had decided at that time that it would be much more rewarding to work for myself. So I launched my own company, the Designers Creative Studio, in 2020. It turned out to be a good move because the company said, we're laying you off with thousands of other people. And I've had the most fun controlling my own destiny now for the last 5 years, using the skills that I learned in themed experience design all over the world on crazy things like airports and resorts in the Red Sea and master planning. There was a 900-acre island we master planned in the Red Sea called Al-Farsha. It was called the carpet or the mat because it was completely flat. The resort we designed was embedded in a volcano, and we had to build the whole volcano. It was pretty cool. Theme parks on islands and just really, really amazing, fun things to be a part of since I left Disney. And one of the things that I did was I wrote a book, and I thought, there's so many people ask me so many different questions about working in the industry, and I talked to a lot of students, which is an incredible blast. And I thought, man, if I could put all of this in one place, it'd be more convenient for me because then I'd have a reference. Well, have a look at chapter 8 or have a look at chapter 3. And so that's out. And now when I do the majority of my lecturing, and presenting, I usually do that out of the book. It makes it real easy to follow. So that's kind of me. That's where I've been. What I would like to do, Michael, Jason, if you guys are okay with it, there's always a few things that the same kind of questions that I get from students, no matter what university I speak at, and I'd love to just kind of go through a couple of principles that I found that could be helpful.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. And then after that, we'll go to Q&A and discussion points. So you can ask me all of the crazy stuff. So one of the first things that I because I've been in creative my whole career, I usually encounter students who are studying to have a role in the creative side of the business in some way. It could be creative director, could be designer, illustrator. And I usually find a misconception about idea generation, blue sky, a creative's role in the industry. And that I like to try to clarify. So one thing that's really important, this helps, I think, all disciplines, but I think it will help our creative brothers and sisters the most, because that's where some of the misconception is. The first thing to remember about this industry is it is not art. It's not, it uses a lot of art in the industry. But this industry is clearly and specifically rooted in design. And the reason that that's important is that design is commercial in nature. It usually supports a brand, a company, or an organization. And usually it has a commercial tie to it. So if there's an investment, then the commercial nature of that is that the asset owner, the client, the person who owns the land and is making the investment and has hired you to help, wants to see a return on the investment. So why is that important? The reason it's important is because it's not your money. You're responsible for the money, but it's not yours. And at the end of the day, what I've discovered, and I wish somebody told me sooner, is that the less money that the project team spends on things like travel, wonderful lunches and dinners, hiring 43 people when you really only need 23 people, those types of things, then all that money that was used for those costs, I'm not saying they're not necessary, but sometimes it can be excessive, right? All that money can go back into all the very cool stuff that all of you want to do anyways. So coming into this world with a commercial mindset, I find is extremely helpful. Here's another way that that's helpful. When you're pitching ideas, you're developing solutions, and you've got a cool story, a theme, a ride, or show concept, some experience that you're working on for the project. If the client says, not going to work, I don't like it, I don't like that part, I don't like this. If during that process of developing that concept, or concepts, if you've had in your mind as an individual and as a team that these ideas all belong to the client, then you have what I would consider, again, especially for our creative friends, is the appropriate distance from the idea. The ideas that you come up with and the concepts and the incredibly cool stuff that you're no doubt going to fall in love with, those things don't define who you are. Those are just solutions that would solve a commercial problem or a brand problem or an audience problem for the client. So if the client says, I'm not sure, I don't like it, you're like, no problem. We got 10,000 more ideas where that came from. And chances are you do, out of your blue sky, lots of other ideas. The reason that's important is because sometimes people can get so bought into their own ideas that they become ineffective in solving the client's problem, and that's why they hired you. Now, I keep using the term problem. It's a business language that says if you're going to make an investment, in something, you're growing your business, then the problem that your business has is that you need more revenue. You need a stronger brand. You need more audience members. You need something for tweens to do. You need something for older adults to do. Those are all in the world of business considered problems that they hire specialists to solve. So I know I may have gone a little long on that, but I just think that is so it's such an important perspective to have when you go in, because your whole responsibility as a team member is creating a solution and solving problems for your client. Even if you're working at Imagineering, I would highly encourage you to think of the Walt Disney Company as your client. Because if you work for Paris, or if you work for Tokyo, or you do a job at the cruise line, or you do a project at Aulani, all in the Disney universe, those 4 or 5 locations are very different. So thinking of them as clients can be very helpful in your relationship with them. I think that's really important. Next point that I'll give you, and this will be the last one and we can jump into questions, but the last point I'll give you is about the fact that you as an individual student, no matter how incredibly skilled you are, no matter how what a great subject matter expert you might be, or maybe you're a really skilled generalist, the reality of this industry is that you'll always be working on a team, and that team will be filled with people who are likely very different from you. So if you are in a technical role, programming, design, project management, finance, that kind of a technical role, architecture, engineering, you will be working right alongside of non-technical people, writers, designers, illustrators, art directors. These are all people in the non-technical phase that didn't need a license to actually practice, where chances are the people in the technical side of the project all needed a degree, and many of them require licensing and insurance just to practice. So why do I bring that up? Because the team on a project is a small ecosystem of incredibly diverse talents. And the thing about themed experience design is it requires that. It requires a lot of people with very different focuses. And at the end of the day, they've got to work together. And I'm telling you what, sparks eventually fly because you see things differently, you process things differently, you end up with lots of tension. And what I always encourage people is to keep the tension on your project positive. The best illustration I could think of for positive tension is a quote I found from a gentleman, apologies, whose name I can't remember. It's in my book, chapter 3. He talks about sails on a ship. If the sail is open but has no wind, there's no tension in the sail. The sail, in fact, is designed to be filled to bursting with wind so that the ship itself can be propelled. That's positive tension. Use all of that energy and horsepower and momentum and fill the sails of the project team, keeping that tension positive, moving you forward, as opposed to getting bogged down in, petty fights against each other. So those would be 2 areas that I would highly recommend. There's a zillion more, but I really would like to leave time for questions, or Michael, Jason, if you guys have anything you want to go into deeper.
I have a question, but it's way off in left field. I'll save mine for last if we have time. So,
Those are my favorite questions.
I'm going to leave this open to students, because I know you and I've had the pleasure of talking, so you've answered a lot of my questions. But does anybody have any questions? This is the time to ask, because you've got, someone very experienced who can give you direct correlation to the industry.
For free.
Yeah, for free. Come on, don't be shy.
You can put it in the chat too.
I cannot believe none of you have a question. Oh,
Come
fine.
on, people.
Is there an internship program for Disney Imagineering outside of the Disney College program?
Yes, Disney Imagineering and Universal Creative, both legacy brands, offer internships for their programs, for their companies, I guess. Imagineering does it in a couple of different ways. I think that they actively recruit. There is, if I remember correctly, and it may have changed after the pandemic, guys, so forgive me, but there was a time when Disney recruiting in general would do quite a lot of work with universities all over the nation, looking for specific talent, graduate programs, that kind of thing, students who really stand out to come to Disney. And Imagineering did the same thing. They would look at a lot of different schools and offer internships. I know that there is, at least if I remember correctly, there is a website for Walt Disney Imagineering internships. I know somebody's next question is going to be, what is it? Look it up. I think it's Imagineering intern, something like that. But yes, they do. The other way that Imagineering offers internships, I don't know about Universal Creative, is something called Disney Imaginations. And the Imaginations program Walt Disney Imagineering runs is a co-ed university level design competition where Michael, Jason, if you know, let me know, but I think it's 5 member teams that are
Do you know if
assembled.
that's still running? Because after COVID, our understanding was it had been kind of shut down. And
Wow.
then I do believe last year it was by invitation only.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's pretty sad. I
Yeah.
did hear that I launched Imaginations Asia when I was in Hong Kong,
Oh, very cool.
and and spent a whole year with multiple universities there to get that going. And then, as I understood, Shanghai, when it opened, adopted the program. And I had just seen a post from Hong Kong, it was last month, where the most recent winners. So it sounds like they're still doing it. Well, I'll
Wow.
just briefly say it for the students. It's basically a design competition, and you have a co-ed team. I think it was originally 5 individuals from universities all over the country. You get a challenge for Imagineering, something like, what if, create a theme park on the moon, something crazy like that. And then teams would fully develop their concepts and then pitch the ideas. And there was it's a design competition, so it would go through different rounds until you got to the finalists. The finalist teams all were flown to Glendale for the headquarters, and then the senior teams of Imagineers there reviewed it, and the winning team got a 1 year paid internship with Imagineering. So that was an amazing program. 20 something years that program ran, and I'd be really sad if it was no longer working.
It is very sad. I know it's definitely left a void. And for the students who have not heard, we are developing our own competition very similar to that. I know MK Haley, I believe, was instrumental in that,
Nice.
the Disney Imaginations. And then I've actually tagged into her to get some advice on how to get this one started as well. So be on the lookout, launching in January. So,
Sweet. That's great. I know there's others too. Blue Loop has one. Storyland Studios has one. Nate Naverson at
yes.
themeattraction.com has one. So
And
there's,
we're actually looking to partner with Nate on that one
oh,
and
cool.
kind of merge the two.
Great, great, great. There may be others. In fact, I'm positive there are. I just, those
There
are the
are.
ones that I know. And so that's always a great way to practice your skills and work with a team. And even if you don't win, it gives you a lot for your portfolio and a lot of practice, and you get to talk a lot with the judges. So I think our mentors as well. I think that's really very helpful.
Very, very cool. And kind of to tag on to that, anybody outside of Imagineering, you can always check DisneyCareers.com, and they have a lot of the internships listed on there. Uh, okay, what are some other questions you guys have? How did you join Disney Imagineering? Did you interview with them? Did they reach out to you? What is the process like to join the company?
It's a really really good question, and the reason I giggled is because I had and I'll apologize up front. I had no idea that there was an Imagineering. I was solely, fully, 100% committed to being in film. When Star Wars came out, and I saw it as a teenager. Oh no, I was a kid, 10 years old in 1977. Loved it. I saw it like 15 times. I'm like, that's what I want to do with my life. So I was all focused in film, and until I got hired by Universal Studios, and I thought, well, this is kind of cool work. And a guy that I met there, Joel Torme, who's done all of the major artificial, like the Tree of Life and the Caldera in Tokyo, the Cadillac Range in Cars Land and Disneyland. It's huge, all large scale stuff he's done. Met him, and then he's the one that invited me to Paris to work in Disneyland Paris at Pirates. So I didn't know. I had no idea. In fact, after Disneyland in 91, I came back to Orlando and Disney wasn't hiring. So I went on and did a bunch of other work for 5 years, and then came back. So I didn't. I basically went in with my portfolio, which had just basically my own artwork in it and photos of a lot of my field work, and met with the vice president at the time. Her name was Barbara, and talked it through, and she was like, "Yep, it's perfect." Things are very different now. I think I've heard horror stories of people interviewing with AI, hiring manager bots and all this stuff. I don't know if Disney does that, but horrible stuff. But that's how I went on board. I got introduced by Jolt, because Jolt had been working with them, and then they said they had a role. So I went out and kind of sat down and talked to them, and they're like, "Yeah, you're great. We want to hire you." And it was just that simple, and kind of never looked back.
Very cool. All right.
Um, I,
So, oh, go
can
ahead.
I tag on one more thing,
Yeah.
Michael? I'm sorry. I should say I have no academic. I mean, I went 2 years to college and got my Associate of Science degree, I think it was. And for me, frankly, guys, I was bored and frustrated, and it's probably because I was such a craftsman, right? I built with my hands, I sculpted, I made models, I painted, did all this stuff, and I was just frustrated with it. So getting out and into the industry just worked for me, and I got to get paid and get taught by the masters, sculpting and painting and building and everything. All the way through. That was just kind of my path. It's not for everybody because it takes longer and lots of challenges, but that's kind of how I got in.
Do you think it would have been a shorter journey to get where you were at if you had, a beyond an associate's degree or two
It's
years
a really
ago?
it's a great question. Back then, maybe. Now, I don't know. I think your degree, especially if you're in an MFA or something like, really high end. SCAD offers MFAs, right? I mean, these. I think UCF does as well, but I don't know. The thing about it is that this industry is so hybridized, so specialized that you could take the best architect from the world, just to pick up a role, and move them into themed experience design, and they'd be starting a steep learning curve to understand how to build a building that a ride has to be inside of, or how to build to design in terms of theatricality. How do you stage that experience as if you are, walking into a movie with the scenes and the mood and it's just so different from anything on the outside world. And it doesn't matter how great your degree is, it will help you, no doubt. You'll hit the ground with a lot more knowledge than somebody who doesn't have that. But there's still so much to learn that, the most important thing I always say that schools should teach you is the love of learning. If you don't come out of school with the love of learning, you have to find it somewhere, because the moment you stop learning is the moment you stop progressing. It doesn't necessarily mean learning from a professor, an educator. It could be learning from a mentor. It could be learning from the person that delivers the mail, or cleans the offices. I can't tell you how much I learned from those individuals, right? Every person has a story and has something to tell you and to teach you. And I hope that every one of you, when you graduate, no matter how fancy, how amazing your degree is, that you have a love of learning and you never stop. That's what
Learn
I
a
hope.
lot from the janitors and the secretaries and the receptionists. They know it
Man.
all.
Yep. Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions? There are so many specific projects, whether it's an attraction or otherwise, that you really enjoyed working on at Disney. What is it like working on those projects?
It's always hard to pick a favorite project. I liked a lot of projects for a lot of different reasons. I was, for example, always a fan of Tower of Terror. And so working at the studios for 8 years as the art director, we were able to do so much work on Tower. We reprofiled it. I was there with the team pioneering how to replace the seats in the cab, and we did some just really, really cool stuff. So that was amazing. That I love the attraction, and reprofiling that was so much fun. And I led the project creatively in Paris to build that. It's kind of like a mini land there in Paris. It's pretty big, a whole like Hollywood area. So that was really fun. Disney Springs is another one of my favorite. It was probably one of the most complex projects I've ever worked on or led in my entire life. It was so many moving parts, so many things that were last minute and that were done in a sequence that was completely different than anything that you do in theme parks. So there were just that was a tremendous, and that was to me like a doctorate degree program with so complex. And then I have to say the cruise line as well. It was so fascinating to take what you do in a theme park or in Disney Springs. You have acres and acres and acres, and you've got sky. You can drop in a 30-foot tree. You can put in a two-story building. You're thinking in terms of a big horizontal plane and how people move in a horizontal plane. On a ship, you have to take all of that thinking about how to create a place, an environment, something that's has an identity and a feeling. And you smashed all of that design thinking into multiple decks on a ship. But here's where it becomes 4D chess for any Trekkies out there. Um, each one of the spaces on a ship doesn't only have to work with each of the spaces on the deck, right, in a horizontal plane. It also has to work vertically with the spaces above it and below it. So you have some extreme design and layout, lots and lots of thinking that goes way beyond just theme, style, color, that kind of thing, or the story that you're telling. It comes down to ergonomics and psychological, the psychology of people and the sociology of people, how people think about spaces, how they want to move through a space, and then how they interface as a group. And if somebody asked me today, what is something that you would go back and tell your younger self? One of the things that I often say is I would have told my younger self that I needed to study more psychology and sociology because design, when you're designing for human beings, understanding how a human being interprets an experience. Everybody comes into an experience with a different bias from how what you've done in your life. Similar experiences. Maybe you don't like small spaces. Maybe you don't like big spaces. Maybe you don't like cold spaces. There's just all these different things. And when you work at Imagineering or Storyland or Forec or Falcons or Imagination or Scruffy Dog, or I could go down the list, you're doing that for many, many other companies all over the world. And one day you might have a job in Saudi Arabia. The next day you might have a job in Western Europe somewhere, or you might have a job in in the Far East, out in Asia somewhere. And all of those audiences and cultures are so different. And so having that psychology is extremely helpful. That helps you design an experience that resonates with the audience that you're designing it for. Because you know how catastrophic it would be if you drop millions and millions and hundreds of millions into an asset, an experience, doesn't matter what it is, and you get it, it's wrong. The people don't like it. That's not going to be good for you or your client, right? That way. So, anyways, that's kind of what I would say. I'm going to make sure I answered everything in that person's question. What was it like working on those projects? The again, not a hard sell, but in my chapter 3 in my book, I go through all the different influences on a project team, what it's like to work on a team, all the different disciplines on a team, and then believe it or not, there's a lot of influences on a team, a lot of things from the outside that influence the team, and one of those, believe it or not, is budget. A lot of people think, wouldn't it be great if I had an endless budget and a schedule with no end and I could work as long as I'm telling you right now, that would be horrible. It'd be horrible because you would always be changing and everybody else around you would be changing and you would be dragging and it would be very slow to come together. Having those constraints like budget and like schedule and constraints like we're in this country and the code demands that we do this. That's a constraint. The client wants this open by this particular date. That's 3 months earlier than we thought we were going to need to be open. You're trucking along, enjoying your time as a project team, and you realize we've got to shave, 10, $15 million out of this project, right? So that's what working on a project's like. Extreme dynamism. It's shifting, it's changing. You have to be super, super adaptive to that. I always recommend a process that I call the growth cycle, and it has multiple stages. The first stage is learning. Anytime you approach something you've never done before, you have to learn. I got to absorb all this stuff, SpongeBob style, to be ready to be able to even perform in this new role. So learn is first. Once you learn something new, you have to adapt, right? Because the old stuff that you knew, some of it needs to be revised and updated. Some of it, the things that you're learning is brand new, you've never known before. So you have to adapt. And then the only way to really put that into practice is to implement. Learn, adapt, implement the new things that you've learned. Well, I got to try this. I got to do that. And what happens when you implement? Sometimes you fail. That's okay. The best news ever is fail fast. That means give it a try, implement it. Oh, that doesn't work. When you fail, you will learn. So that's really important. And then the last part of after implementation is mastery, right? So learn, adapt, implement, and master. That's the circle. Anytime you're in a project and you've never done anything before like this, and all of a sudden you're required to do it, find somebody that's done it before and ask them for help. That's the absolute best way. One of my very first projects at the studios, I had never done show controls. I'd never been around that part of the attraction design business. And so the woman, Linda, on the team, she was older, way more experienced than me, but she was so great. She said, look, what direction do you have for me? Because I was the art director. And I said, Linda, I feel a little bit ill-equipped to give you direction because I just don't understand. Would you mind taking a little time to teach me, to inform me about the big, broad brushstrokes of show control so that when I give direction, it'll be solid direction. It won't be just, something crazy that she, spins off in a million different directions. So I got to shadow her for a while. We did all kinds of attraction ride-throughs. I showed up at night after the park closed, and we walked through attractions and talked about stuff. Man, Linda taught me so much just because I asked.
And wait a
And
minute, let me clarify, Theron. You said you were her art director,
yes,
so she reported to you.
Yes.
So I'm pointing this out to the students so they understand you don't always have to be directed by somebody above you. You can learn from someone who is reporting to you.
Million percent. As an art director, you are, and I'm pretty sure most projects all work like this. At Disney, it was this way. Every single thing that the guest sees or experiences must be informed by the creative director or art director. That's the role. So that is the that's the slowdown point of the whole project, right? Is the art director, that individual, that creative person, because you can only process so much information, even if you work 24/7. So the information that you don't know, even if you're in charge, especially if you're in a leadership role, you have to ask. You don't get puffed up and go, well, I think you should, because that then the whole project will end up in the ditch and on fire with the wheels spinning, and that'll just be terrible, embarrassing, and frustrating for you. Just asking somebody, hey, look, dude, I've never done that before. Lighting design. I never did that before. That's how I learned the with Disney Springs. I went to a lighting designer. I said, "Hey, Greg." Greg teaches at Ringling now. Hey, Greg, this is kind of the look and the feel that I'm going for. And he goes, "Oh yeah, where you want to be is incandescent, about 2750 Kelvin, and you want this, and you kind of want that." And we had this discussion. And what was I doing? I was learning. I was sponge bobbing that whole moment. Now I know the difference between 2700 and 3000 Kelvin and what the look and the feel is. So now when I can give direction, I know that. I didn't know that before. So don't be embarrassed about asking. That's how we learn. I would really encourage that for anyone.
Awesome.
Is it time for Jason's weird question? I'm like, I'm like,
It is, but I'm going to ask a question first. I'm going to ask a question first because you talked a lot about the cruise line. And
hmm,
for anybody who knows me, I am a huge cruise line fan. In fact,
nice,
I just got off the Dream recently. Um,
nice.
so, as someone who was responsible for the Wish, the Treasure, and the Destiny, I'm very interested to know it's a noticeable departure from the old, 1940s classic ocean liner, look and feel. What was the design direction and decision to go, to me, something completely different?
It's funny because I would say it's just a step change, right? The look, the feel of the ship is 100% brand. You have to stay on brand.
Yeah.
But we had to expand capacity. I think we went up an extra, maybe 3 levels. I think we're on, I can't remember, deck 14, deck 15. We actually extended up, and then we couldn't go much wider because we were in the Panama Canal class. So there's a width restraint. So we tried something that I pushed for that actually brought a lot of extra room, but didn't increase the overall size. And that was the two areas that actually scoop out, that kind of bubble out on the sides. That gave us deeper rooms, and we could play with the hallways and stuff. So I think one of the biggest things for any project that you work on with Disney, Disney always wants innovation to be upfront. Um, we have to tell very rich and engaging story narratives. We have to use and leverage IP, intellectual property, as much as humanly possible. In fact, almost to I think to a negative, right? There's not much original story that's now invented. It's all you can only use these 5 IPs. So the first focus that we used, Michael, on the ship was when I came on board as the VP. The first thing I started doing was meeting. It was with Carl Holtz at the time, who was the president of the cruise line for a long time. Carl's amazing. If any of you guys have ever met him, yeah, amazing leaders, very just great, just really great. And so Carl basically had prepared, he and his team, a whole list of what we would call in the design world criteria. Here are problems that we need to solve with the new design. And there was a very succinct problem. I'll pick one. There's a lot of bunch up and crowding and the traffic gets very condensed in the dream and fantasy class midship elevators, right, Michael? Right? You
Yes.
you walk on board,
Forget
and
at dinner time, you are not going to use that elevator.
yeah, I'll paint a quick picture for the students who are listening. So Michael walks on board with his family, his loved ones, his friends, and when he walks on, what do they say? Welcome, Michael Cole family, and then everybody claps stuff, and you walk into the atrium, and you're awed because you see three, four decks. It's all open in the atrium. On the left-hand side, depending on what ship you're on, you have a main restaurant, very, very visible there. On the right-hand side, you have the midship elevator lobby right there. So what does everybody do? Well, I'm going to go to my room. So everybody goes right. Everybody goes and waits in that elevator lobby. Now, we're human beings. When we're in a place that we've never, here's the psychology, kids. When you go into a place you've never been before, think about this in your own life. You memorize that way so that you don't get lost, and you always come back to it. So everybody was accessing the midship elevators. So that's why it was so crowded, Carl. Everybody else on the whole ship that entered through the midship elevators, and in their minds, that's where they went back to. Only if they were someplace aft or someplace forward where they go, hey, there's an elevator here. But those two other elevator shafts were woefully underutilized, and everybody came back to the middle. So what I did was I said, well, let's remove the midship elevator. Let's remove it, and let's add additional elevator shafts on forward and aft, and then we'll take those two and move them a little bit closer so they're midways. The ship is like a third, and a third. And wow, they weren't really sure that that was going to work. We're not going to sure. We better get some engineers on there. And they studied it. I don't remember how long, several weeks, a month. And they came back and we had a big meeting. And they said, you know what? All of our numbers show that you guys are right. If we remove this elevator, we get way better flow through the rest of the ship. And there was nobody, because they were running simulations, nobody's clumping up, gathering up, backing up in these areas, and you had much better distribution throughout the whole space. So what we did, Michael, was, and I can't tell you, we're avid sailors, cruisers as well with Disney, and one thing that always happened at dinner time, both early and late seatings, was you had a bunch of people arriving in the atrium to go to dinner. In the middle of the atrium, entertainment would do what they call a character flood. So they would take 4, 5, 6 characters, position them in the atrium so that it's this great moment. You can, hey, there's, Cinderella, there's Baloo the bear, whatever, whoever was on board, Chicken Little, whatever. And so you have one whole group of people that are streaming through the atrium to get to dinner. Now you've got other people who are branching off to get their photos taken with the characters. You also have professional photography going on the atrium staircase and other areas that are set up. And you have people using the elevator. So you had this complete kludge of people in here. Well, when we designed Wish Class, we broke all that traffic up into different spaces, and we divided that by sinking certain portions down, elevating other portions, and we put in a stage performance venue where the midship elevators was on the Dream and Fantasy. This gave a very specific proscenium where you could queue in front of, keeping the area in front of the restaurant clear. So a lot of that goes back to what I was saying earlier. This is a commercial enterprise. If the ship doesn't make money, they're not going to build more ships, right? It's going to hurt the brand. So most of our solutioning on my team was about how do we make the ships, design them in a way that they can be very profitable, one, very safe, of course, that's a Disney requirement, and then innovative and bold and fresh and new and do things for the guests that none of the other ships had, like we did completely individually themed decks for the guests. So you could go into different decks, and those decks would be expressions of whatever the particular theme of the ship was. If it's Wish, it's all magical and enchantment, and there are enchanted forests, and then there's enchanted palaces. And so we have got, multiple decks in there that are themed differently, and what the rooms look like are different. So you could go in and on one sailing and you could get an enchanted forest room, or the next one you could get, like a Cinderella room, enchanted palace, and that kind of thing. So all of those were things that we did differently. But the reason we did them differently is because we listened to the criteria, the feedback from the guests, and then the feedback from the business to drive what I would call the most profitable ships in Disney's fleet. I know that for sure because I know every single bed on that ship, every berth can be sold. Where Dream and Fantasy, they cannot sell every berth. That's a story for another time. But
We
we
can talk
discovered
about that
that.
offline. I'm
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, yeah.
interested in that.
It's all about lifeboat capacity, and so, anyways, we designed the
Wow,
Wish class, the Triton class rather, so that every single berth could be sold.
amazing.
Yeah.
I could talk all day about that. But in conscious of time, I want to get to Jason's comment or question because it was the weird one that's out of left field.
Yes. Drum roll, please.
All right. So and this has to do with your early work, because I just got thinking about all the movies that I grew up with. So I'm imagining in the film industry, the collection of artists that get hired to sculpt rock is a relatively small community. So if that is the case, do you know, like, all the artists that worked, for the first movie that stuck in my mind that had a lot of rock work was like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That last bit has a ton of rock work. Are you like, yeah, Joe did that?
At the time, there was a gentleman on Stargate by the name, I think it was Michael Hosh, I believe was his name, and he was kind of over the whole scenic area. I worked for a person named Joanne Brown, who I don't know where she's at now, but master level scenic and painter, and I mean just master level. And she most of the movies and TV I worked for her. But to answer your question, Jason, yes, there is a community of scenic craftsmen, craftspeople that do all of that kind of thing. They will age in distress. So age in distressing is carpenters will build a brand new wooden crate and hand it to the scenics, right? And the scenics would use hammers, bats with nails, chains, wire brushes, all kinds of things. And we would literally distress it. We'd beat it, right? It's like a smash room. You get your frustration out. You'd use a file, and it's to make it look worn and used. And then you would age it. You'd paint it so that it looked old, layers of paint, rusty hinges, that kind of thing. So that's a whole skill set in and of itself. What we did on Stargate, for example, is we used a catalyzed expandable foam. So the same kind of thing that they use in attics where they'll spray and it's a isocyanate foam, probably not good for you to breathe, but they would have a flat up on a pedestal, and the flat would be, when you erected the flat, it would be the one side of the Egyptian building in Stargate. So that whole thing was down, and they would walk along the top of it, spraying this foam that would expand, and you'd get this big marshmallow foam top on the flat. And then we would go through and sculpt it and texturize it to look as if it was Egyptian sandstone. And then they had molds. They would spray the foam in molds, and it would make bricks and stones and hieroglyphics, and we would put all that together and carve it and sculpt it and paint it and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a small I wouldn't say small. They probably branched out into your big scenic shops now, like Bungalow Scenic or Adirondack Studios. You have a lot of those individuals that work in scenic shops.
Were you ever whittling your foam into sandstone and like Kurt Russell walks by?
No, we were in Yuma, Arizona, which was hella hot, if you can say that. And before production got there. So working in film in the construction part of it, you're there before the talent the production gets there. Now, a couple of on a TV series, a couple of TV series, and on a movie, I stayed and was the production painter during the whole filming, which that's nerve wracking because you have the whole production, the director, everybody standing there waiting for you to go on set and touch up or paint something. And inadvertently, it's a bunch of high paid people with their arms crossed and foot tapping for you to get done so they can do what they need to do. But yeah, and when I was with Imagineering, one of the roles that I had as the art director of the studios, I represented Imagineering in a program called Synergy. And Synergy was basically just leveraging the Disney studios and all the live action films and animated films, all the films that they were producing, and how does Imagineering represent those films in their parks? So that was amazing. So I got to walk a lot of film shoots, and we would say, "Oh, we want this set, we want that set, we want these things." So for example, I was on Soundstage 2 when they were shooting the asteroid scene for Armageddon, and
Oh,
they
wow.
were in there filming, and the bells went on, lights went off. We opened up the door, we walked in, and off to the side, the whole group of Ben Affleck and Michael Bay and everybody else, all the stars walked out. We walked in, they walked out the other side. That happened to me on Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy and yeah, a bunch of that stuff. So
That's so cool.
I
So
was just
cool.
there for the sets. Those guys were, I don't get starstruck, so it was just like they're working, we're working, let's
Well, when
get
you're
our jobs
accustomed
done.
to seeing Ben Affleck and Eddie Murphy, of course you don't now. Well, this has been wonderful. I want to be very conscious of your time. We looks like we've been a minute over, so I do apologize. Does anybody have any last minute questions they are just dying to hear? If it's quick. If not, I probably missed this one. Your team vary by each project. Are you working
Hmm.
with the same people or group?
Oh, that's a really great question, Adya. Yes, it varies. Um, Again, not a hard sell, but it's illustrated in my book. There's four core groups: creative, design, delivery, which is basically project management, and a group that I call administrative. That's finance, that's contracts, that's scheduling, that's estimating. I kind of grouped all of them into one group. Every single project has those four groups on it. But if you are in an attraction, for example, and you've got a ride system, well, then you're bringing on the specialty group ride design. You also are almost always using the show team. So show does audio animatronics. They do media design. They'll do holy cow, they do low voltage systems. They'll do all of the ride and show programming. They'll do props. They do graphics and signage. So each project takes on a little bit different character. You can imagine if you're working on a ship, right? You don't have the ride design people necessarily because you don't have a Disney's never going to put a roller coaster. Well, I hope not, anyways, on a Disney ship. It's not what they do. So you don't need those individuals, but you wouldn't necessarily need a very big interior design team, for example, on an attraction. You would probably have some folks, but on a hotel, the majority of the people on there would be interior design and architects on there, and you wouldn't need like a lot of show people doing special effects and illusions and those kind of things. So yeah, it's constantly changing, and that was kind of one of the things I was saying in the beginning about the teams. Teams are very dynamic. They're made up of a wide variety of people, and you could work on a project, get to know everybody, have a great time. You're doing that for 3 to 5 years. You go on another project and you could work with people you've never met, don't know, and are just knowing for the first time. And you're on another 3 to 4 years on another project. So it's a very dynamic world for sure.
Very cool. This
Great questions, everybody.
wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time. You have mentioned your book several times, which I really appreciate because when does it come out again?
It's out.
Is
You
it?
can get
Okay.
it on Amazon.
I
You
apologize
probably
because I know I pre-ordered it,
That's
so I guess
okay.
I'm waiting for it to arrive. I thought it was still a little bit later.
Well, hopefully you got it. I know Chris said he ordered 25, so
We
I'm not
ordered
sure.
several of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they were distributed. Probably the easiest way for anyone is just to go to the book's website, creatingmemorableworlds.com. And it explains the book, it gives you a preview, you can see everything. You can order through that site, and that goes through my publisher, which is probably the cheapest way to get the book. It's $60 through the publisher, $68 through Amazon. With the publisher, you're going to pay for shipping, but depends on where you live.
And
There's also
that site again was,
creatingmemorableworlds.com.
guys, this is very valuable. I would really highly recommend it.
It's 390 pages, 9 chapters, and the last chapter deals with you, the reader, how to take all the information from all 8 previous chapters, do a self-evaluation, where you fit in the industry the best, how to navigate and move throughout the industry. And there's a ton of resources in the book as well that should help. So,
Awesome.
guys, thanks so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the invitation. It's a blast.
It was really great
Thank
hearing
you.
from you. Looking forward to see you again real soon.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
see everybody in November, hopefully.
Yes, yes. November 17th. Are we still on for 10:30?
We are.
Awesome. Can't wait. We'll talk
Great.
later about details.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
everybody. Take
Yep.
care.
Yep.
See you, Jason.